I still remember the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on me, the sudden silence that fell over the grand ballroom like a curtain dropping, and the cold smile on Marcus Thornfield's face as he pointed at me and said those words that would change everything. That night was supposed to be just another corporate dinner, another evening of networking and polite conversation. Instead, it became the moment I stopped hiding, stopped pretending, and discovered that sometimes the truth costs everything you thought you had, but gives you back something far more valuable. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From the moment I walked into that ballroom thinking I knew exactly who I was and where I belonged. My name is Daniel, and until 6 months ago, I was living what everyone around me considered the perfect life. I was 34 years old, working as a senior marketing director at a mid-sized tech firm in Chicago. My apartment overlooked the lake. I drove a decent car, wore expensive suits, and dated women who looked good on my arm at company events. My parents were proud. My college friends envied me. I had built exactly the life I was supposed to want. The problem was, I had spent so long building that life that I had forgotten to ask myself if it was actually mine. I grew up in a conservative household in Ohio, the kind of place where men played football and married their high school sweethearts. My father owned a construction company. My mother taught Sunday school. I had an older brother who followed in Dad's footsteps and a younger sister who became a nurse. I was the one who went to business school, the one who moved to the big city, the one who was supposed to make it. And I did make it, at least on paper. But there was always something underneath, something I pushed down so deep I almost convinced myself it wasn't there. Almost. The dinner where everything changed was the annual Chicago Business Leaders Gala, one of those events where everyone who matters in the city's business community shows up to see and be seen. My company had bought a table, and my boss had specifically asked me to attend because we were trying to land a major contract with a venture capital firm. I spent the afternoon preparing, rehearsing talking points, making sure my suit was pressed perfectly. I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror that evening, adjusting my tie and telling myself that this was an important night for my career. I had no idea how right I was, just not in the way I expected. The event was held at the Palmer House, in that massive ballroom with the painted ceiling and crystal chandeliers that make you feel like you've stepped into another century. When I arrived, the room was already filling up with Chicago's elite, men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns, everyone holding champagne flutes and laughing at jokes that probably weren't that funny. I found my company's table and started making the rounds, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, playing the game I had learned to play so well. That's when I first saw him. His name was Adrian, though I didn't know that yet. He was standing near the bar, and what struck me first wasn't his appearance, though he was handsome in an understated way. Tall, with dark hair going gray at the temples, wearing a simple black suit that somehow looked better than all the expensive tuxedos around him. What struck me was the way he was watching the room, with this slight smile that suggested he found the whole spectacle mildly amusing. He had a scar above his left eyebrow that caught the light when he turned his head, and his hands, when he lifted his glass, were the hands of someone who had worked with them, not just pushed papers around a desk. I told myself I was just observing the room, doing what you do at these events, cataloging faces and trying to figure out who was important, but I kept finding my eyes drifting back to him. He caught me looking once, and instead of looking away, he held my gaze for just a moment longer than was comfortable, then raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. I felt heat rise in my face, and quickly turned back to the conversation I was supposed to be having with a woman from a marketing firm who was telling me about her company's latest campaign. The dinner itself was interminable, course after course, while various speakers droned on about innovation and leadership and the future of Chicago business. I was seated between my boss and a lawyer who spent the entire meal talking about his son's lacrosse team. I nodded and smiled and said the right things, but part of my attention was elsewhere. I had learned, through careful eavesdropping and a glance at the seating chart, that Adrian worked for a nonprofit organization that provided legal services to immigrants. He was at a table near the back, clearly not part of the main power players in the room, which made me wonder why he was there at all. After dinner, as people began to mill around again, networking in earnest now that the alcohol had been flowing for hours, I found myself near the terrace doors. The ballroom had gotten warm with all those bodies, and I needed air. I stepped out onto the terrace, which overlooked Michigan Avenue. the city lights spreading out below like scattered diamonds. The November air was cold enough to make me catch my breath, but it felt good after the stuffiness inside. I'd been standing there for maybe 5 minutes when I heard the door open behind me. I turned, expecting to see a colleague or maybe someone looking for a quiet place to make a phone call. Instead, it was Adrian. He walked over to the railing a few feet away from me and looked out at the view without saying anything. We stood there in silence for what felt like a long time, but was probably only 30 seconds. "Beautiful city," he finally said. His voice was deeper than I expected, with a slight roughness to it, like he had spent years speaking over noise. "It is," I agreed. And then, because silence felt dangerous, I added, "Though I'm guessing you're not here for the view." He laughed, a genuine sound that made something in my chest tighten. "No, I'm here because my boss thought it would be good for the organization to have a presence at these things. Show that we're part of the business community too, even if we're not making anyone rich." "What do you do?" I asked, though I already knew. "Immigration law," he said, "mostly helping people navigate a system that seems designed to be as confusing and hostile as possible." "What about you?" "Marketing," I said, and immediately felt like I should apologize for it. "Tech sector. We help companies optimize their digital presence." "That sounds important," he said, and I couldn't tell if he was being sincere or gently mocking me. "It pays the bills," I said, and then, surprising myself, though sometimes I wonder if that's enough of a reason to do something. He turned to look at me then, really look at me, and I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "That's a dangerous question to start asking yourself," he said quietly. We talked for another 20 minutes, standing on that terrace while the party continued inside. We talked about the city, about work, about nothing important and everything important. He told me about a case he was working on, a family from Guatemala who had been separated at the border and were trying to reunite. I told him about a campaign I had designed that I was actually proud of, for a company that made affordable medical devices. He had a way of listening that made you want to tell him things, leaning in slightly, his dark eyes focused entirely on you like nothing else in the world mattered at that moment. At some point I realized I was cold, really cold, my hands numb and my breath coming out in visible puffs. "We should probably go back inside," I said, though I didn't want to. "Probably," he agreed, but neither of us moved. And then it happened. I'm still not entirely sure who moved first, if it was him or me or both of us at the same time. But suddenly the space between us had closed, and his hand was on my arm, warm through my suit jacket, and I was looking up at him because he was a few inches taller, and then we were kissing. It wasn't a long kiss, maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like falling and flying at the same time. His lips were cold from the air but soft, and I could taste whiskey and something else, something that was just him. My hand had come up to his chest, and I could feel his heart beating fast under my palm. When we broke apart, we just stood there breathing hard, staring at each other. I felt like I had just woken up from a dream, or maybe into one. My mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts all colliding at once. What did I just do? What does this mean? Did anyone see? Oh God, what if someone saw? As if in answer to that thought, I heard the terrace door open. We stepped apart quickly, probably too quickly, and I turned to see who it was. My stomach dropped. It was Marcus Thornfield. Marcus Thornfield was a billionaire, one of those tech entrepreneurs who had made his fortune in the early days of social media and now spent his time investing in startups and, apparently, attending charity dinners. He was in his early 50s, with silver hair and the kind of tan that comes from owning a house in the Bahamas. He was also known for his conservative politics and his generous donations to candidates who opposed LGBTQ rights. I had never met him personally, but everyone in Chicago business circles knew who he was. He stood in the doorway for a moment, and I watched his expression change as he processed what he had just seen. Surprise, then understanding, then something that looked almost like delight, the way a cat might look when it corners a mouse. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Well," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. "Isn't this interesting?" I felt my face go hot despite the cold. Adrian had gone very still beside me, his hands in his pockets, his expression carefully neutral. "Can we help you with something?" Adrian asked, his voice level. Marcus ignored him, his eyes fixed on me. You're with Hartman Tech, aren't you? Daniel something. I was talking to your CEO earlier. He was telling me about your big pitch next week. My mouth had gone dry. I managed to nod. He speaks very highly of you, Marcus continued, taking a step onto the terrace. Said you were one of his best people, a real up-and-comer. He paused, his smile widening. I wonder what he'd think about this. About what? Adrian asked, his voice harder now. About two adults having a conversation on a terrace? Is that what you're calling it? Marcus laughed. Come now, I know what I saw, and I'm sure everyone inside would be very interested to hear about it. I found my voice finally, though it came out shakier than I wanted. There's nothing to tell. Oh, I think there's plenty to tell, Marcus said. In fact, I think I'll tell everyone right now. It's such a boring party anyway. This will liven things up. He turned and walked back toward the door. For a moment I was frozen, unable to move or think. Then Adrian's hand was on my arm again and he said quietly, You don't have to go in there. We can leave right now. But I was already moving, following Marcus back into the ballroom. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe that I could stop him somehow, or explain, or convince him it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of him telling the story without me there. The ballroom felt impossibly bright and loud after the quiet darkness of the terrace. Marcus was striding toward the center of the room, where a small stage had been set up for the speakers. People were starting to notice him, turning to watch. I saw my boss at our table, looking confused. I saw the woman who had been telling me about her lacrosse-playing son. I saw hundreds of faces, all starting to turn in our direction. Marcus stepped up onto the stage and picked up the microphone that had been left there. The feedback squeal made everyone stop talking and look up. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice booming through the speakers. I apologize for the interruption, but I just witnessed something I think you all should know about. I stood at the edge of the crowd, feeling like I might throw up. Adrian had followed me in and was standing a few feet behind me. I could feel his presence like heat at my back. I just saw two men kissing on the terrace, Marcus announced, and there was a collective gasp from the crowd. One of them is standing right here. He pointed directly at me. Daniel, from Hartman Tech. I thought you all should know what kind of people you're doing business with. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, could feel every eye in the room on me. My boss's face had gone pale. The lawyer from dinner was staring at me like I had grown a second head. Some people looked shocked, others disgusted, a few sympathetic, but mostly they just looked curious, like I was an interesting specimen they were examining. I should have denied it. I should have laughed it off, said Marcus was drunk or mistaken or lying. That's what the old Daniel would have done. The Daniel who had spent 34 years building a life that was acceptable to everyone else. But standing there with all those eyes on me, I felt something shift inside. Maybe it was the kiss, still burning on my lips. Maybe it was the look on Marcus's face, so smug and certain that he had destroyed me. Maybe it was just that I was tired, so tired of pretending. You're right, I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, but it carried in the silence. I did kiss him, and I'm not sorry about it. The gasps were louder this time. Marcus's smile faltered for just a second, like he hadn't expected me to admit it. Well, he said, recovering quickly, at least you're honest. Though I'm not sure honesty is going to help your career much after this. Maybe not, I said, and I was walking forward now, moving through the crowd toward the stage. People stepped back to let me pass, like I was contagious. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. I climbed up onto the stage, and Marcus took a step back, his expression uncertain now. I took the microphone from his hand. It was heavy, and my hands were shaking, but I held it steady. Since we're being honest, I said, looking out at all those faces, I should probably tell you that I've been lying to you all, to myself too. I've spent my entire adult life pretending to be someone I'm not because I was afraid of what people would think, afraid of losing my job, my family, my friends, afraid of ending up alone. I saw Adrian in the crowd, his face serious but his eyes encouraging. But you know what I just realized? I continued. Being alone is better than being surrounded by people who only accept you when you're pretending to be someone else. So yes, I kissed a man tonight. And yes, I liked it. And if that makes me unacceptable to you, then I guess I'm unacceptable. I put the microphone down and stepped off the stage. The silence had shifted, become less hostile and more uncertain. I walked back toward Adrian, and as I passed my boss, he grabbed my arm. "Daniel, what are you doing?" he hissed. "You're throwing away your career." I looked at him, this man I had worked for 5 years, whose approval I had sought constantly. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm finding something more important." I had almost reached Adrian when I heard the commotion at the entrance to the ballroom. People were shouting, and then I saw them. Police officers, at least 6 of them, pushing through the crowd. My first thought was that someone had called them on me, that kissing another man was somehow illegal, even though I knew that didn't make sense. But they weren't looking at me. They were looking at Marcus Thornfield. The lead officer, a woman with steel gray hair and sergeant's stripes on her uniform, walked up to the stage where Marcus was still standing, looking confused and angry. "Marcus Thornfield?" she said, her voice carrying in the silent room. "Yes. What is this about?" Marcus demanded. "I'm in the middle of something. Mr. Thornfield, you're under arrest for securities fraud and money laundering," the sergeant said, and 2 officers moved forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." The room erupted. People were shouting questions, pulling out phones, rushing toward the stage. Marcus was yelling something about his lawyers and this being a mistake, but the officers were already cuffing him and leading him away. I stood there stunned, watching as the man who had tried to destroy me minutes ago was marched out of the ballroom in handcuffs. Adrian appeared at my side. "Well," he said quietly, "that's something you don't see every day." I started laughing, and once I started, I couldn't stop. It wasn't funny, not really, but the absurdity of it all, the timing, the way the entire evening had spiraled so far beyond anything I could have imagined, it was too much. Adrian was laughing too, and then we were both laughing so hard we had to hold on to each other to stay upright. "I should probably leave," I said, when I could finally breathe again, "before anything else happens." "That's probably a good idea," Adrian agreed. "Can I walk you out?" We made our way through the crowd, which had mostly forgotten about me in the excitement of Marcus's arrest. My boss tried to stop me again, but I just shook my head and kept walking. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap, clearing my head. The street was full of police cars, their lights painting everything red and blue. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen anyone do, Adrian said as we walked away from the hotel, heading toward the lake. "Probably stupid," I admitted. "I just lost my job, and my reputation, and probably any chance of working in this city again." "Maybe," Adrian said, "or maybe you just got your life back." We walked in silence for a while, the city lights reflecting off the dark water of the lake. I was still processing everything that had happened, my mind jumping from the kiss to the confrontation, to Marcus's arrest, to the uncertain future stretching out before me. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part felt lighter than I had in years. "I don't even know your last name," I said suddenly. "Reeves," he said. "Adrian Reeves. And before you ask, yes, I'm single. And yes, I'd like to see you again. If you're interested." "I'm interested," I said. "Though I should warn you, I'm kind of a mess right now. I just came out to 200 people, lost my job, and I have no idea what I'm going to do next." "That's okay," Adrian said. "I like messes. They're more interesting than things that are all neat and tidy." We exchanged numbers before he got into a cab, and I walked the rest of the way home alone, my mind racing. When I got to my apartment, I poured myself a drink and sat by the window, looking out at the city. My phone was full of messages, some from concerned friends, others from reporters who had somehow gotten my number, a few from family members who had already heard about what happened. I ignored them all and just sat there, thinking about the man I had been that morning and the man I was now. The next few weeks were hard. I did lose my job, as expected. My boss called me the next day and said that while he personally had nothing against me, the company couldn't afford to be associated with the controversy. Some of my friends stopped returning my calls. My parents didn't speak to me for 2 weeks, and when my father finally did call, all he said was that he was disappointed in me before hanging up. But other things happened too. I got calls from recruiters at companies that valued diversity and authenticity. I heard from old college friends I hadn't talked to in years, telling me they were proud of me. My sister called and said she always knew and loved me anyway. and Adrian called every day, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to invite me to dinner or a movie or just a walk by the lake. I started seeing a therapist, working through all the years of denial and fear and self-hatred I had been carrying around. It wasn't easy. There were days when I regretted everything, when I wished I could go back to my comfortable lie. But those days became fewer and farther between. 3 months after the gala, I got a job at a nonprofit that worked with LGBTQ youth, helping them develop marketing and social media strategies. The pay was less than half what I had been making, but the work felt meaningful in a way my old job never had. Adrian and I were officially dating, taking things slow but steady. I had come out to my entire family, and while my father still wasn't speaking to me, my mother had started to come around, asking careful questions about Adrian and my new job. As for Marcus Thornfield, it turned out he had been running a massive Ponzi scheme for years, defrauding investors of hundreds of millions of dollars. The FBI had been investigating him for months, and they had chosen that night to arrest him because they knew he would be in a public place surrounded by witnesses. The timing of his attempt to humiliate me had been pure coincidence, though I like to think of it as karma. 6 months after that night at the Palmer House, Adrian and I were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Wicker Park. We had just finished our meal and were sharing a dessert when he reached across the table and took my hand. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Okay," I said, suddenly nervous. "That night on the terrace before we kissed, you said something about wondering if paying the bills was enough of a reason to do something. Do you remember?" "I remember." "Do you still wonder that?" he asked. I thought about it. About my new job and my new life and this man sitting across from me, holding my hand in a public restaurant without shame or fear. "No," I said. "I don't wonder anymore. I know the answer now." "What is it?" he asked, smiling. "It's not enough," I said. "Not even close." He squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. I felt like myself. Not the version of myself I thought I should be, or the version other people wanted me to be, but just me, messy and imperfect and finally honest. I think about that night at the Palmer House often, not the humiliation or the fear, though those are part of it. Mostly I think about the moment on the terrace, that kiss that lasted 5 seconds and changed everything. I think about the choice I made to stand on that stage and tell the truth, even though I knew it would cost me. And I think about how sometimes the things that seem like disasters in the moment turn out to be the best things that ever happened to you. I'm not going to tell you that everything is perfect now, because it's not. My relationship with my father is still strained. I still have moments of doubt and fear. There are still people who look at me differently when they find out I'm gay, who make assumptions or judgments or just get uncomfortable. But here's what I've learned. Living authentically is hard, but living a lie is harder. Pretending to be someone you're not takes more energy than just being yourself, even when being yourself is complicated and messy and sometimes painful. If you're reading this or listening to this and you recognize something of yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You're not alone. There are so many of us out here, people who have lived in that space between who we are and who we're supposed to be, who have felt that weight of hiding and pretending and never quite fitting into the life we built. And I want you to know that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to take your time figuring things out. But I also want you to know that there's freedom waiting on the other side of that fear. There's a version of your life where you don't have to pretend anymore, where you can hold someone's hand in public and kiss them on a terrace and not care who sees. It might not be the life you planned, and it might not be easy, but it will be yours. Really yours. And that's worth more than any amount of money or success or approval from people who only accept you when you're lying to them. My truth set me free. It didn't happen all at once, and it wasn't painless, but it happened. And if this story touched you, if you saw something of yourself in it, then maybe you're ready for your own truth too. If you are, I hope you'll leave a like on this video. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories about real people finding the courage to be themselves. And if you want, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, or just write, "My truth set me free." You don't have to explain. I'll understand. We all will, because you're not alone. None of us are. And that's the most important truth of all.